Hi guys, Steve Davis here with Stillwater Woodcraft. We're going to dive in today is start a new series on some simple trapping techniques. Okay, I've done numerous videos on trapping on this channel and on Wilderness Outfitters channel. What I want to do is just redo them a little bit, bring it up to new things that I've learned along the way. So what I thought we'd start with today is just setting a simple blind set snare in a game trail. Now right here we have a small game trail, okay, it's very narrow, so I'm kind of looking for something that deer aren't using so they don't trample my snare. But we have a way to deal with that also, and we'll talk about that later when we get to that point. It's getting kind of thick here, so this trail might be hard for the camera to pick up or for you guys to see it, but when we move into the closer shots, you'll see what I'm talking about. So what I'm going to use today to make this snare is a common 18th century item, and that's just some brass wire. Okay, this brass wire, I think this piece is 20 or 21 gauge wire. It's soft, pliable, you can bend it all around. Not only is it good for snaring, but it's also good for making all kinds of repairs. Just anything you can think, to use a piece of wire for, it's good for. So it's a really good thing to have in your kit. I've seen leather repaired. You look at the back of my powder horn strap, it's put back together with a piece of brass wire. Gun stocks repaired, pots hung with it, leaders made for turtle fishing out of it, all kinds of uses. So, pick up a roll of this, play around with it a little bit, keep it in your kit, you'll be glad you did. Alright, so now that we've used our tracking skills to narrow down a place to set our snare, someplace that we can tell game that we're targeting is using frequently, we're going to get this set up, okay? Now, thing with blind set snares, this is a numbers game. One snare probably isn't going to do us all that great. 10, 15 snares, then we're getting started on it. So keep that in mind, with your success rate on this. So we'll get us a piece of wire cut off here and get to making our snare. Alright guys, we got our brass wire here. Something to cut it with. I carry this little pair of pliers. These are actually watchmaker's pliers in my shooting bag. There's people that make hand forged sets of bag pliers and stuff. Larry Callahan comes to mind. He makes top quality stuff. He made my bullet molds. Something to check out. But these do have a pair of cutters on them. To kind of play with the sun here, I set up in a bad spot. So we got our wire. Get this unspooled here. I do wrap these ends up so the spool's secured pretty good, because when it's in your bag it has a tendency to go crazy on you. So I'm going to pull off the piece of wire that I need and nip it off. This brass wire is soft enough that you can cut it with a knife or an axe without damaging the edge, as long as you're careful doing it. Roll that up, secure that and my pliers back in my shooting bag. So I got the end of my wire here, okay? There's a really good way to make this loop. Instead of just bending it over and twisting the loop, what we're going to do is take a piece of dead stick. You want something that's really easy to break. You're going to take that stick and take that wire around it twice. So we have the wire around there twice. Then we'll just hold both ends of that wire and twist it. So we got a nice loop around that wire. Now you wanted that dead stick so you can break the stick and it pops right out of there and you don't get stuck. What that does is makes a nice little loop that's wrapped around there twice. Now the important part of that being around there twice is when this gets tension on it, that loop will collapse and help to lock our snare down. So now that we seen how to make that properly, all we gotta do is feed that in back through. I'm gonna preload our snare to the shape we want. There, snare made. So let's get this set. Okay, we're down here, we got our snare made. Okay, this trail runs right in through here beside this little sapling. So I'm going to utilize that little sapling to hang this snare off of. I'm just going to wire this to this little sapling to secure it. Now to secure it, if we didn't have something here, we could always drive a stake in the ground or find something heavy to use it for a drag. You know, sometimes that's a real good option, especially when you're using an inferior snare material like a natural cordage. If they can't get a big yank on it, they're just going to have a weight tied to them and you can find them pretty easy. What I'm going to do is think about what I'm targeting. So here I'm going to be targeting more like rabbits and squirrels. So I want to think about the height of that animal as it's moving. Okay, a squirrel isn't very tall. So we want this snare to hit them about the chest level and go over their head, so they're putting their head through it, catching on their chest and closing the loop as they pass through. What we don't want is it low enough that as they're walking, they step through the loop and get them around the body. We want them around the neck if possible. Like I said though before in many videos, any catch is a good catch. So, you know, that's that. But we're going to just hang this here. And the really nice thing about wire, as opposed to natural cordage, is you can form it to hang where you want. I'm just going to secure that off real good. So we can take this wire and just bend it around until it's hanging in the position we want. Okay, we got it here, it's about 3 fingers up off the ground. Might want to lower the top of that a little bit. Something like that. Okay, now what we need to do, as simple as that is, now we need to force that animal through that snare rather than it just walking around it. And that is just as simple as taking some sticks or something, you know, if you got a dead log laying there, whatever, and set some sticks in the ground just to kind of make a little fence around it. And it doesn't have to be a whole lot, especially for smaller game, because animals, you know, are like people, they tend to be lazy. And instead of step over that or go all the way around it, we're just going to help them into that snare. Now we have this sapling on the back side, and we can kind of just stick some more stuff in that way. So you can see we're fencing this off, so that's the obvious hole. We can even move that over a little closer, so the snare is the obvious hole. So pretty much, you know, this snare setup is done. Now around here, you know, we have tons of white-tailed deer, and in places you have bigger game that use the same trails that the smaller game might be using, you're going to want to make it so they don't just trample this. Okay, and the best way to do that is to make them step over it. So if you take something, and for this you want something substantial, okay, so they don't just go through it, they step over it. Now we can take something like this branch and come over top of this. We can put a piece of wire on there or however you want to secure this. Just a piece of you know, bark would work just fine. That way a larger animal will step over instead of, you know, making our snare inoperable. And that's as easy as setting a blind set snare up. It doesn't matter how good a set you make, it's got to be in the right place. So, you know, it's always tracking skills. So, you know, narrow down a well-used trail, set up a couple snares on this trail, then find some more and do the same in that. make sure you're forcing them through there. Check your snares with these wires. You want to check them off, and every 24 hours is not enough. If you're out on a trek, make a camp, say early afternoon, set a couple snares, check them, 2 or 3 times. That way, with something like this, it doesn't have a swivel and it's not multi-strand steel cable like modern snares. They're not breaking it off. We sure don't want to injure an animal and then, not take use of it. So keep in mind with that kind of stuff, guys. This has been Steve Davis, Stillwater Woodcraft. Get out and set some snares. We'll see you on the next one.